I'm Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm thrilled today to welcome our guest. Now, before I mention who it is, our longtime listeners know that Bonnie and I are notorious for doing a little bit of fan gushing when we have guests on our podcast, and today is no different. Today we have Barbara Moore with us, and Barbara's been working with and loving the tarot for a long time. I think 30 odd years. She's a popular tarot teacher. She's a workshop leader. She has shared her knowledge and her talent worldwide. She's created, collaborated on numerous decks. I'm going to name a couple. They will probably all be familiar to you. The Steampunk Tarot, Good Fortune Tarot, Mystical Manga Tarot, Shadowscapes Tarot, and one of my all-time favorites sitting right beside me, the Gilded Tarot. She's authored a number of books on the tarot, Tarot for Beginners, Your Tarot Your Way, Tarot Spreads, not just tarot books. She's the author of Modern Guide to Energy Clearing. She has been Llewellyn's Tarot Acquisitions editor for over 25 years, and today Bonnie and I get to chat tarot with Barbara Moore. We are lucky. We are honored. We are blessed. Barbara, welcome. It is so good to have you here with us.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I feel welcomed, and I'm so excited to be here chatting with you guys. I've listened to some of your podcasts. I know that you have really cool ideas about tarot, and I'm just looking forward to hanging out and chatting.
Oh, good. That's basically what Bonnie and I do here is we hang out and chat tarot. So to get us started, actually, perhaps you could tell our listeners either your origin story with the tarot. So either how you found the tarot or how the tarot found you.
That is always such a good question. Everyone's stories are always so interesting. And, at the time that it happens, I always wonder if we secretly know that something big has happened. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you know and sometimes you don't. But my story goes something like this. It was, when was it? It was in the 90s, and I was in college. And back then, it was very popular to do interdisciplinary studies. So, and I was an honor student and a geek and a nerd. So I was totally into it. And I had a group of friends, and so you know how the Golden Dawn, all the people in the Golden Dawn, it's hard to understand their writings because they've all read the same thing. So they're writing to each other so they can shorthand. Okay, my friends and I were like that. So, we were studying mythology, psychology, advanced mathematics, physics, just all those things. Chaos theory was really big back then, kind of tying it all together. And so we were having a party one night because that's what you did. And a friend brought out this box, opened this box, pulled something out wrapped in a scarf, yes, and then kind of slowly unwrapped it. And it was a deck of Rider-Waite tarot cards. And we're like, ooh, cool. And it was my turn to hold them and look at them. And because I was we studied all those different subject matters, but my degree was in history. So everything that gets filtered through that lens. And I opened up that deck of cards, and I'd studied art history too. So I recognized a lot, and I knew a lot of religious history. So I recognized a lot in there. And I felt like I was holding the sum of all human knowledge in my hands. I mean, now I would modify that to say Western knowledge, right? Because the East is different. But at the time, Western European knowledge, I was holding that in my hands. It was in a deck of cards. It was amazing. And all I knew is that I wanted to know more. And I mean, we played with it and used the little book, but we weren't really into fortune telling, right? I mean,
Right.
it was more of an intellectual curiosity. And that's kind of where it started for me. Which was great because right about that time was when the psychological approach to tarot was really taking off, and there were some really great books that took that approach. So that's when I dove into the deep end.
Nice. Wow. That's somebody. Did you hear that, Bonnie? That's somebody speaking my language around the tarot. So
Yes, I know. Peter's a huge history buff as well. So as soon as you said that, I'm sure he was like, woo, I'm so excited. But that's amazing. I kind of felt the same with the tarot. It's almost like it's like a knowing that you have about the cards, but you don't know where that knowing is coming from, or almost like a remembering or something. It's like, wow, this is just so natural, and this just makes so much sense to me. So it's funny that a lot of people have that same experience when they first, have their first deck or they're first introduced to the tarot.
Mhm. You know what's interesting though? Like, okay, so back in the 90s when I was meeting people who were meeting tarot, that felt true. But now when I teach and I usually provide students with a deck, a rider weight,
Mhm.
and say the first thing I have them do is shuffle the cards and lay out three cards and tell a story. I mean, just like, and they act like they don't know what to do or how to. So I'm not, oh, in the newer students, I'm not seeing that connection, that remembering. There's more of a
Mm.
fear, a block, like, I don't know. A, maybe because when I started, there were a handful of books. There was virtually no internet. I mean, I don't know when you guys got into tarot, but back in the day, there was something called Tarot L and Alt Tarot. I mean,
Mhm.
these were like news groups.
Yep.
That was it. So maybe because back then there was hardly anything, so we were all mad scientists playing with the cards and not afraid. But maybe now, since there's so much instruction
Mhm.
available, what do you guys think about that? Have you noticed that?
So I mean, from the origin, I certainly remember the idea of the alt tarot discussion group.
Mhm.
Eclectic tarot was another one when in the
Mhm.
early stages of kind
Right.
of the web. But yeah, as far as um, people, and I wonder whether or not it's, and it makes me think actually about a quote that I had heard you state in one of the courses that you had talked about is that it's that blend of because tarot has a structure, but it also has a freedom, and I wonder whether or not people get stuck and hung up in the structure of the tarot itself. They're like, well, you asked me to tell a story of three cards. Well, I don't know what these cards mean,
Right.
and it's like, well, it doesn't matter at this particular point in time what
Mhm.
they mean. What you need to do is talk about what you see. That there are three cards in front of you. They tell a story. Which way
Mhm.
is there a character? Which way is the character going? All of those kinds of things. And you're right. There seems to be a real reluctance, and maybe it's fear, maybe it's lack of freedom. Maybe it's because I do think that there's an element of fear that comes with the tarot as well, where people are like, oh, can I use it that way or not? I don't know. I don't know if I was quite clear in my idea, but I definitely think I see that a reluctance to work with the tarot, or even just tell me what it means. Don't I'm not going to tell you what it means. You tell me what it means. And it's like, well, there requires a personal connection. There has to be some sort of narrative that comes in. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to add to anything there, or
Yeah, I think I got into tarot quite late, actually. Like I'm almost a newbie. So I got my first tarot deck when I was a teenager, and I believe it was the Rider Waite Smith deck, and it did have that little white book. And it's funny that I didn't resonate so much with the cards back, and that would have been early 90s for me as well. Um, and I think about that, I'm like, why didn't I really evolve with the tarot? Because I had it so early on, like in my own journey. But I thought, I don't think there was enough information out there. Like, I don't think I was ready to learn the tarot until this point in my life where there's so much more of a perspective of healing and self-discovery and how you can use that for personal growth as opposed to the fortune telling side. So I think maybe for people who are new to the tarot now, it could be that there's so much information, it's overwhelming. It's like, well, which book do I start with? Which deck do I start with? But at the same time, too, if they're coming from that perspective of like, I mean, this could just be the way people see it, but sometimes, like when we think about the tarot, we think about fortune tellers, or you have to be a psychic, and it just comes naturally to you. So if somebody is looking at the cards for the first time and they don't identify with like, oh, I need to use my intuition, or I have to be a psychic, or I don't know what this card means. It's almost like this fear of getting it wrong, or I'm not part of that lineage, you know? So I think it could be like a lot of different things, but maybe, yeah, I think people maybe just being afraid to get it wrong and not trusting themselves to see what's coming up for them when they look at the cards.
And maybe it's even like more basic. Because Peter, you said something about, and I don't remember what you said, but it made me think a new tarot student's first job is learning how to see.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, one of the things we call tarot readers or fortune tellers or oracles are seers.
Right.
You
Exactly.
have to be able
Exactly.
to see.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that is both a, it's a noun that describes exactly that. It's someone whose action is to see, to see something. And then, you know, the because I love that when you talk about the psychological sort of approach to tarot, then, you know, well, what do I see can start that concept of self-narrative and self-discovery, because we can, you know, I often think one of the most valuable things that or ways to use the tarot is as a tool to help us see ourselves clearer, and that visual medium that in a lot of ways is universal, that, you know, has images or symbols that many people can connect with, makes it very, very powerful. But I think sometimes the structure, though, sometimes the images can be intimidating to people. But you're right, people, you know, you have to see. It is a visual medium. You couldn't close your eyes and use the tarot. That would be different. Would be different. I guess you could if you were trying to do clear intuitive work. You probably could try and close your eyes. I don't know how effective it would be, but yeah.
Well, back in the day, do you know Wald and Ruth Ann Amberstone?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I've taken some of their classes through the tarot school.
Okay, yeah. So maybe 20 years ago, I don't remember when, but used to go to the conferences and hang out with Wald. Fascinating man. And he was always so cool and visionary, like out there. And he'd be like, you know, you don't even need a deck to do a reading. You just close your eyes and you see the reading, you know, come in front of your eyes or whatever. I'm like, whoa, you're high level, dude. I cannot do that.
Although between the two of them, that's probably close to 100 years of tarot experience as well, I would imagine, right? They started the tarot school. I think they started the Reader Studio as well. So, you know, yeah.
But sorry.
Go ahead. No, Bonnie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a question. Excuse me. Do you not see life through the lens of tarot? Like, I find myself doing that. I'll see things and then I'll think about a card. I'm like, oh, this is like, well, a tower moment. We all know those tower moments, but I see everything through the lens of tarot now. And even when I'm thinking about people and messages I'm receiving for them, I get cards in my head. And I'm like, oh, I should really tell this, not that as if I'm doing a reading for them, but I'm like, oh, that brings up an important point that I should talk to them about or whatever. So I'm constantly seeing images of cards in my mind. So I don't know if that happens for the both of you too.
Well, technically, interesting fun fact, technically, I don't ever see anything in my mind because I have aphantasia. Oh, wow. So I do not have a mind's eye. So I don't see anything in my head, which I didn't know until like 3 years ago was why I can't, you know, visualize an apple or whatever the thing is. So I don't see anything in my head, but yes, seeing life through tarot. Right. Absolutely. Right. All the time. And it's the frame, people have worldviews, philosophies, religions, whatever they have that is their lens to view the world through. And tarot is absolutely 100% mine and has been for a really long time.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, where, whether it's moments, even sometimes physical objects, and I think I've talked and even written about this before, where, you'll see, 7 or 8 trees lined up, one beside the other, and you'll think, oh wow, 8 tree, oh, 8 wands, or, that the idea of 3 pencils sitting on a table and going, oh, pencil, that's the idea of word. That, again, that concept of 3 of swords, thinking of the world through that, even just in the everyday moments. And then I think of someone like a Benabel Wen, who has such a practical yet spiritual approach to the tarot. Like, that anyways, I think there's so much room for the tarot in everyday life. And as well as you had insinuated, the idea of ideological or philosophical perspectives or lenses through which we look at the world. And then it kind of being that it being the tarot. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and kind of playing off the idea of not having a deck or not using a physical deck. Another way I feel like after all these decades, tarot is kind of embodied in me, if that makes any sense. Meaning that I've learned a lot about how energy works and therefore how the world works. Like if, energy is too up here and too fast, that's more like the Knight of Swords, so it's this energy. And if I'm not enjoying that or that's not useful, what's the opposite? Is earth, so do the grounding thing. So I learned how to regulate myself and move through the world more easily because I understand how the cards work together.
Right. Can I ask a follow-up question to that then? Because you've talked a little bit about how you practice, or how you started with the tarot. So how has your work with the tarot, or even your concepts, of the tarot, of a tarot-based framework, evolved over time?
Yeah, well, that's a long time and I've changed a lot because I'm always looking for the perfect thing. Okay, yes, how has it changed over the years? Well, in the beginning, it was very much the psychological base because that's where I was. Psychology and mythology were my main things. And, and it was very intellectual and very fascinating. And then I started doing more readings. And back then is when we were starting to push against the idea of fortune teller. It was like in the 90s where, well, like Llewellyn's book, The Truth About Witchcraft Today, if you look at that cover from the 90s, it shows a woman in a business suit with a briefcase. So we were really, really trying to distance ourselves from the 1-800 lines and charlatans and whatnot. And we were really focusing on not doing predictive readings and not reading about third parties. This all kind of started in the 90s because we were reacting against something. And so I was drinking from that well. So that's where I was. And I was trying to do readings in that manner. Now, it had been kind of my experience, and I know not all readers had the same experience. People I read for didn't necessarily care for those readings. They wanted to know if their boyfriend was coming back. They wanted to know if they didn't want me to talk about their issues with relationship baggage.
Right.
They didn't want that from me. They would rather go to a therapist for that, and rightly so. So I struggled a lot for a long time. Well, I'm a tarot reader. How do I read? Who do I read for? And I worked at a metaphysical shop just to like dive in and try to figure this out. And I eventually figured out 2 things. One, I don't care about telling the future. I have 0 interest in that. And 2, I'm not really a people person. I mean, you hear so many readers saying, my main thing is I want to help people. I don't. Not like that. Not like that.
Right.
That's not my ministry, right?
Right.
Like when I was going to college, I did this day-long testing thing and then another day of like analysis of it with the counselor. And I remember the counselor saying, you could be a doctor. You have the brains and the skills and the aptitudes, but you don't like people very much. You would be a really lousy doctor because of that.
That's brilliant.
So that's when I'm like, okay, I can quit beating my head against that wall. But I like teaching, love teaching. I like explaining, the structure, the big picture, and then pointing students in the right directions to find their joy. That I do like. So that I started doing more, started teaching at conferences, started offering apprentice classes, all kind, and writing books, obviously. As an introvert, writing books is technically my favorite thing because I don't have any contact with people except my editor. So, but I do like teaching. There is something about teaching that I really enjoy. So I still am doing some of that as well. And so now my tarot is like, I have professional arms of tarot. I'm still doing books, still doing decks, still teaching, still presenting at conferences, but not doing readings for the public for their safety.
I would love to get a reading from you. Are you kidding?
You would not. You would not. I'm pretty blunt and mean, and you would not like it.
I love it when people know their strengths, right? And yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So for my personal practice, though, it's completely different, right? I'm just playing with the cards. I'm using them. I use them in strange ways that are hard to articulate or teach or put in a package and say, here, pay me $35 for this. Because it's not like that. Well, for example, here's I can recommend. Everybody should have a good study buddy. Because someone who you consider an equal, because if it's hierarchical, one person's always going to be listening to the other person, needs to be equal. And it's good if you have common ground, but also a difference. Because you need that challenge that'll help you grow. So I have this study buddy. We've been working together since 2018, I think. And we're really good for each other. And we like to work with the solstices and particularly the winter solstice, but we usually start with Samhain, even before that. Start preparing because it's not just a one-time thing. Like it's a process. It's a ritual journey. And we have ideas as we get started, and then it evolves as we go. And it's not the same every year. 2023 was the year we discovered our inner wild mystic. We decided we were going to go on the wild hunt, and we started it in October and we ended it with the winter solstice. And that was big and dramatic. And we created spreads and readings that took us outdoors. Like these journeys are on our tables and our cards, but also out in the world, going, to cemeteries and riverbanks and, looking and doing for things. And whenever you bring tarot in, crazy and fascinating stuff happens. Like one of my central cards for that cycle was the Hanged Man. And my walk took me in this cemetery area in the back part of it where it's not the public part and it's all wooded. And on the ground was a noose.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure it was for moving monuments and things, right? Not
like what a powerful, whatever talisman symbol, whatever you want to call that, right?
Right. And then, so that was kind of big and epic and dramatic and amazing. Well, they're all amazing, but big and epic. Now, this year, I'll be honest, both he and I felt a little battered. Our sports team did not win the big game this year. Try not to talk about politics, but that.
I
So
caught
we
I caught the subtext there.
Yes. And so we decided we weren't, and last year was so big,
Mm,
we're still integrating that
Mhm.
knowledge,
mhm,
which is something people who do ritual don't always remember. Part of the ritual is the aftercare, it's the
mhm,
integration, like a shavasana at the end of yoga,
mhm.
right? So we went kind of easy in this year. So because we're so tender and vulnerable and not ready to be out in the world, we're adopting the idea of tend your garden. This is what you can do. You can't affect all the world, but you can tend your garden. And so we created mandalas because we thought winter solstice is the time of year where we plant our seeds
Mhm,
for the next year.
mhm.
Well, not even plant them. We're like, this is when we're looking at the seed catalog and picking out what we're going to
Right.
do. And then as these weeks go on towards spring, see, it's different every year. So we, went through to winter, but we're also going into spring because now we're researching our seeds and planning to
Mhm.
plant them, so that, anyways, that was a lot of talking. Ritual
No,
work, really
yeah.
interesting adventures, nothing set in stone, nothing easily shared or explained, but amazing nonetheless.
No, but I mean, it does link to something that you had talked about because when you talked about your first discovery, you'd mentioned the idea of psychology and chaos theory. And I always think, if we allow ourselves space for the unpredictable when we're doing the kind of work that you're talking about, whether it's mandala work or ritualistic work, or I even think, in a lot of ways, a tarot card is a talisman that you can use for magical work. All of those things, you sort of, in some ways, and it it's that, I guess, balance between system and magic. It's, you have cards that kind of mean something and that images that, can mean different things. And then you've got that magical piece that links itself well to chaos and unpredictability, and then leads down the pathway to manifestation and all of those kinds of things that live so nicely in the tarot universe.
Yeah.
And none of them have anything to do with a reading or with telling the future. So no, thank you for sharing that. That was, as Bonnie and a lot of our listeners will know, I'm fascinated by that kind of work, the work
Mhm.
like the magical side, and same would also work with the 8 points of the wheel of the year. I do a lot of work with astrological connections as well through the tarot, and it just lends itself so well to that.
It really does. It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah. And if you're
You
like artsy crafts, oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
no, go
No,
ahead.
no,
I
go
was just gonna
ahead.
ask you a question, but I don't want to interrupt you.
I was just gonna say, if you're artsy craftsy, you can bring that into the work as well. That's all. That's all.
No,
What were
no.
you gonna
Well,
Just
ask me?
yeah, go
I
ahead,
was going to
Bonnie.
ask you about the mandala. Like you've piqued my interest now. So how did you create a mandala?
Okay. Well, I was hoping you'd ask. Um,
There you go.
And then
no,
you mentioned something sort of off camera about a good luck sigil. Are you going to talk about
oh yeah,
that
I can
too?
talk about that too. I got all these notes and things laying around. I can talk about whatever. So yes, the mandala. So Charles, okay, my friend and I, one of the ways that we're different is we both like structure and the rules, but he likes them a lot more. And I'm more practical and yeah, but if it doesn't work, don't force it kind
Right.
of thing. So he, of course, I'm like, well, let's pick our cards consciously, like go through
Mhm.
and select I think that's how you should make a mandala. Well, that's how I wanted to make this mandala. And so I was just picking, I knew the areas in my life I wanted
Mhm.
to seed, make seeds for, pick seeds for. He did one for each suit and one for, and the major arcana.
Right.
So and I didn't do that. And he got a little mad at me because I didn't do it that way. Okay, so I know it's a podcast, but just so you can see. So that's
Yep.
my scrappy mandala. So I picked the card I wanted my main self to be this year to seed, and that was the Nine of Pentacles. And then I picked two more to support that. And I did that for one, two, three, five different areas in addition to my central like
Right.
core. And then I picked those. So then I So this is like my seed catalog, the pages I picked from my seed catalog. And then, which for the people who can't see, it's just a big piece of paper where I printed out the cards and glued them on and made notes on them so that I know what I thought at the time. And then in the idea of planting the seeds, I made a different little book. I just untied it, open it up, and then each area has, that's the 9 of Pentacles, and then the page opens up with the 2 other cards and then room to write. So it looks like a seed growing, right? All the pages do
Right.
that. I like to
Wow.
do things like that. So, and this is going to be the seeds that I'm going to plant and take care of this year. So that's my mandala.
I love that. That is so
That's
creative. And you picked every card consciously, like intentionally, right?
I did for this one.
right.
The good luck thing, I didn't, I had a combo, so I'll tell you that, because sometimes it's fun to have tarot playing a role, bringing in something that you don't intend, but sometimes it's good to, I'm intending, I'm making these choices, I'm taking the responsibility. Sometimes it's good to do that. And that's what I felt I needed for the mandala. So that's what I did for the mandala. And then, so we were meeting the other day for our New Year's meeting, and we wanted to do some New Year's readings or activities or whatever. So I was kind of researching, well, New Year's is a great time to bring good luck into your life, right? So I look up New Year's good luck traditions, and there's many of them, but one of them was to buy a new good luck charm. And I'm like, oh, we don't have to buy one. We can make sigils. So we started doing that. Now, I have to tell you, I am not a sigil girl. In fact, I was looking through an old journal and I noticed I had been trying, and I even wrote, this was supposed to be a sigil, but it's not working. So, and then even on this one, I was trying to make sigils and it's not my thing. So I have another plan because I'm still going to do it. But so what we did for the good luck charm, we both selected our main conveyor of good luck, either the type of luck or like he picked the 9 of Pentacles this time. He's doing well because he needed that energy.
Right.
But me, I read Arthur Waite said the Ace of Pentacles is the most fortuitous card in the deck or something like that. And I've always believed that because because I'm a Capricorn, I like Earth, I love this plane of existence. And the Pentacle is that, with the reminder that spirit is embedded in there. And I love the idea of the ace as you crack that seed open and something divine and real grows out of it. So I picked the Ace of Pentacles. Then, okay, so my little nieces and nephews and their family, they play a game, a conversational game called High Low Buffalo. Have you ever heard of High Low Buffalo? Okay.
Yes, but I can't remember what. Yeah. Okay, go on. But I have heard of that.
Yeah, so you say, hey, Bonnie, what was your high, low buffalo for today? So high is the high point or a favorite good thing. Low is a challenge or something you could have done without. And buffalo is something goofy, silly, funny, unexpected. You got an onion ring in your French fries kind of thing.
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, we will have our main luck attractor, and then bring in tarot. So, okay, tarot, when I'm going into something that I feel like is going to be a high and I want to bring my good luck charm with me, what aspect do I bring? For my low, what aspect? And like that. So then I let tarot give me the cards, and tarot is very wise and gives me exactly what I need.
Always.
And so for the highs, it's the Page of Wands. So Ace of Pentacles carried by the Page of Wands, so that if I think I'm going to go in for a good experience, how to amplify that,
right.
Be the Page of Wands. If I'm going into something that I feel like is going to challenge me, I'm the Knight of Pentacles, which is perfect because it's always, if I ground and slow down, I can respond, not react. And that's what I need. And then Buffalo is 6 of Wands, which has a lot of meanings, but in this case, I was picking up on the hero or the victor is tied to the community. They're all one and they're all in it together. So always look for ways to raise everyone up to enjoy your buffalo with you. So yeah, things like so that one, I tried making 3 sigils, but it was a nightmare. So instead, I'm going to make 3 discs and then draw Ace of Pentacles symbols on the front and then the appropriate ones on the back. And that way, if I'm leaving the house or going into these situations, I grab my sigil or my good luck charm because it's not a sigil.
Right. That is just, sorry, go ahead. No,
that's it.
No, it's fascinating. Like the elements that, the intentional draw of cards, the thought of, this is what I need, or I'll use the word manifest, but I'm trying to bring forward at this particular point in time, and then going in and selecting a card that has a personal connection to you. And I know Bonnie and I usually when we have episodes where we talk about each card. So we have, an episode on the aces, an episode on the 2s and 3s and so forth and so on. We often talk about practical ways to be able to use each card. And what you've done there is you've given people who are listening just some incredible ideas to be able to use cards, I think, in ways that people would be, wow, I've never thought of being able to use, a tarot card or a series of tarot cards that way. It's just fascinating work. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I hope people do get inspired and, go off and do their own things because, the thing about all of these things that we do, my friend and I do, we never do them again. Yeah. We don't repeat them because they're designed for who we were in that moment. And if it's a ritual working, who you are at the end is different. Right. So your needs are going to be different next time. You can't repeat the same ritual.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that because it's true. We talk so much on this podcast about intentionally pulling cards and drawing the energy from those cards for whatever it is that we need. And when Sasha Graham was on, she talked about like using the cards as medicine. And so I think that plays such an important role in my life, like in how I use the tarot as well, because there are these pictures and these symbols that we can draw upon. And just by looking at a card, you can instantly feel the energy. So when you're talking about how you sense like you're embodying tarot now, I really get that when I'm intentionally pulling cards and trying to draw from that energy. My daughter was working on a submission. She's applying for college and she wants to go into interior design. So she was working on this project that she was wanting to submit and she was stressed out. And I said, Samantha, I'm going to pull you some cards and you can put these cards like on the table in front of you. So I was actually giving her cards for her to put on the table to help her draw from that energy. So I think it's such a magical thing that we have access to. And again, if people could see that broader perspective of how we can use the tarot and not just for readings or predicting the future, it has such a rich tapestry. Like it just is incredible.
Yeah. 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 It's talismanic. I find anyways, because Bonnie, you were talking about Samantha and using cards. I worked in education, in public education for a long time, and I will still do training in public speaking. And I will, every time, and Bonnie, you know this, I will select a card, usually Strength, King of Swords, and I'll place them on the podium or nearby where I'm speaking because what I'm trying to do is manifest. So I think King of Swords, I want to make sure that I'm in control of the language that I'm using. That when I'm doing a keynote to 150 or 200 people, I need to make sure that I'm selective in my words, that I'm, that there's an element of wisdom that's there, that I'm making that choice. And that card really resonates with me. And the visual representation of the card itself means something. So I draw the energy from that card. And then I think, though, there's a symbiotic relationship is that then what that card represents for me now gets intertwined in the meaning of the card itself. So now moving forward, when I look or use that King of Swords, I also think about the idea of, public speaking or selection of words, which wouldn't necessarily be a traditional meaning that's associated with that card. So I do think that the work that you're describing, that intentional work, it's a two-way relationship between the person that's using it and between the card itself. I don't know if you see it that way, as well, or.
Mhm. Very much so. I do see it that way. And of course, I think the more you live the cards, the more you can understand them. Conversely, I have heard people say, oh, I hate the Emperor, or I hate the Suit of
Mm,
Pentacles, or
yeah,
whatever. And I'm always like, oh dear, you cannot be an effective tarot reader unless you are in right relationship with all the
right.
cards,
Yeah.
honey. So get right. But I don't say that out loud very often because people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They want to hate what they want to hate, and that's okay. On the other hand, though, because you always have to look at all the aspects of
Mhm.
something. So when you take in something, a very personal and specific meaning, you also have to be aware that it is a personal and specific
Correct.
meaning, and don't try to apply it in, where it's not appropriate,
Correct.
which I'm sure you and I would never do, but maybe some more
Mhm.
inexperienced people might need to be reminded of that.
Yeah. Well, and this is where it does remind me. You had a quote, and I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it. Oh, it was I was actually I'd gone over some notes because when we realized that you were coming on as a guest, I'm like, I know that I had listened to a course you had offered. I was really interested in the history of the tarot, and I think you had started this course talking about a brief history of the tarot. So I had listened to probably the first 10 or 15 minutes, and this has got to be 8 or 9 years ago because it was in an old journal, and I had, Barbara Moore, and the quote was, and I put it between quotation marks, so I'm assuming it was a word for word quote, but I might be paraphrasing. It was, tarot's magic is in its structure. And I always think, that you're right, you can't, because I worry sometimes now that we have, and maybe this is just, my perception is we have tarot practitioners that are just like, yeah, you know what, the card can just mean whatever you want it to mean. And it's like, well, it can't actually. There's a structure that comes along with the, with a tarot card, and we can certainly expand the meaning to include, our personal relationship. I think of Susie Chang, who does some incredible work in linking, like she's a self-professed sort of data geek, and she literally keeps track of cards of the day, and she'll look at the frequency in which she drew a particular card and talks about, where she's seen examples of that card. But she's very explicit in that that's actually my personal connection to the card. Um, and I worry sometimes that if people dismiss the structure of the tarot, they're going to see an image and say, well, I can just figure out what that means. I don't know. I thought that quote was so poignant. I wrote it down, and I still have it. Like I said, I'm sure it must have been somewhere around 2017, 2018, but do you remember
That
that? Am I?
yeah. I mean, I don't remember that specifically for sure, but I have said that, and I still believe. See, sometimes have said things 20 years ago. I may not
Yeah,
still believe them now.
correct,
That
correct.
I still believe.
Yeah,
That is my main tarot truth. And to me, it almost, I was going to say, it doesn't matter what the pictures are. That's not quite accurate.
right,
This is why any deck is useful,
correct.
because of the structure. So I can find whatever that deck's story is, because each deck has its own story.
Mhm.
I can find it because I know the structure, and
Right.
I know where to start, and then I can just dive into it more specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I believe that. And yeah, I find it troubling when people are like, "Oh, the cards mean whatever you want them to mean," which I don't think is true. But you know what? I keep trying to comfort myself. Um, Tarot has evolved from
Yeah,
its first incarnation.
correct.
It keeps changing, and I'm sure, maybe the um OG fortune tellers didn't like the psychologicalization of tarot.
Right.
Now I'm not liking this, whatever we're calling this, of tarot.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's going to evolve, and this is for future generations to tend to that garden. I won't be around.
That's a that's a fair point, actually. Thank you for that clarity. You're right. Um, that it has evolved and continues to evolve, and maybe it's evolving in a way that, like you, I'm kind of like, not how I'm going to use it, but
Well,
but I
like
get it.
right now I'm writing a new book on tarot spreads, and to make it different from my original book, which was mostly theory and a little practice. This one is um gonna have a historical overview of spreads, which is just as interesting
Wow.
as the historical overview of tarot. And I'm writing the chapter about where we are right now in tarot spread development. It's really hard for me not to be snotty about it because I'm not a fan. So I'm forcing myself to see the benefits, the positive, like trying not to get off my lawn, you youngsters. Um,
Wait,
so-
that's my line. Get off my lawn. Yeah,
sorry.
Oh no, Bonnie, go ahead.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, please. No, you go. We're gonna do our chip. We'll do our little Chippendale chipmunk. No, after you. No, after you.
No, please. Yes, the Canadians are always like, oh no,
Right.
I'm sorry. Please, no, you go ahead. I was going to ask you, Barbara, because you've created so many decks and even Oracle decks too. Like, do you have a favorite? Can I even ask you that? Or how do you, like, if you're going to do your own tarot practice, which deck do you gravitate to, or does that change all the time?
Even as far back as the 90s when when I started, I called myself a serial monogamist. But now I'm not even a monogamist. I'm just whatever. What's the opposite of that? No, we won't say.
No.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite deck, and no, my favorite deck is the one that's most appropriate for my need in the moment. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Good answer.
Great answer.
But I mean, in just generally speaking, right now I'm working with Good Fortune, which is my most recent deck, and then I've spent a couple of years studying Marseille. Oh, baby, love, freedom from all the baggage of the Rider-Waite. I had no idea. So in that sense, there's this cute little deck called the Pip Speak or Pip Squeak or something. Pip Speak Tarot. Pip Speak Tarot. It's adorable and cute, and it has gold edges, and it shuffles so well. It's a delight. If anyone's interested in Marseille and likes cute or can deal with the cute, check it out because it's a joy to use. I would recommend that. So that and Good Fortune are my current working decks. Always usually have a Rider-Waite around because sometimes you have to refer to that. But yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not alone, right? I'm not alone. I'm the same. Rider-Waite usually hanging around because reference. I think you were asking what are ours, Bonnie? What's your current fave?
Well, my current favorite is the Steampunk Tarot. So nice. I got it as a Christmas gift that I bought myself to give to my husband to give to me. So I've had this on my wish list for a really long time. I've been really drawn to it and I absolutely love it. And I love your writing. I have your Trick or Treat Tarot. Some of my favorite tarot cards are in that deck, like the Seven of Pentacles. I think that is my favorite Seven of Pentacles in any deck that was created. It's so smart. It's brilliant. The way that you create the summaries to go along with the cards, the images that are in the cards, they're just, I love them. So I would say Trick or Treat Tarot is on my top. I mean, I only use it around Halloween or else I'd probably use it all the time, but it really is an amazing deck. And I think I kind of have an issue with collecting decks and I try to bond with that deck. So I'm never using the same deck all the time. So whatever new deck I have, I tend to work with that deck for quite a while until I get something else that I like. But if I don't resonate with my new deck, then I'll go back to some other one. So, but I am enjoying the Steampunk Tarot. The images on the cards are amazing and I love the book. So how about you, Peter?
I mean, probably Barbara, like you, it's my favorite deck is the right deck for the moment. However, I have go-tos for different kinds of stuff. So the Rider-Waite Smith will always be my teaching deck for a variety of reasons. One, it's still, it's part of the public domain. So, it can be, at least for the time being, it can be used, in that capacity. But it was, and I don't know what iteration, for me, it would have been, 84, 83, 84, high school age, where I would have got my first deck. It would have been some kind of Rider-Waite deck at the time. Up until relatively recently, Joanna Powell Colbert's Guy and Tarot deck would have been my go-to. I'll call it my magical deck, and probably as much. And it's very different. I mean, you can sort of see the Rider-Waite influences in there, but if anybody's ever seen the deck, the images, nothing like the Rider-Waite, and probably because it was gifted. My wife bought it for me as a gift when I actually attended the Reader Studio in 2010, and Joanna was selling them. She had the special edition, like she had 500 regular size, 500 big size, and my wife actually bought me one of the big size because I love it. It fits well in my hands, and I've probably used that ever since. And you can tell because the deck is well used. And then current decks, like to do a bit of client work, right now it's probably Isabella Rotman's This Might Hurt Tarot, which is a really nice, I'll call it a Rider-Waite clone. And I don't mean that to be, dismissive of her artwork, which is stunning, but you can absolutely see in most of the cards where she kind of gets her inspiration from an artistic perspective. And then I've been playing with the Urban Tarot a little bit. So, but I would probably, fall in that if it's got some Rider-Waite. Oh, and Tarot of the Abyss, the black and white tarot deck. So like you, I'm probably still in my serial monogamy phase as far as tarot decks go, but I've been known to stray from time to time, and maybe instill jealousy in the decks that I, would normally use. I don't know.
You're such a player.
He's a player, yeah.
With the deck of cards, there you go. There's great language.
Well, speaking of decks, should we each pull a card?
Yeah, we're getting.
So, Barbara, at the end of each of our episode, we pick a deck. I'm using Steampunk Tarot today, which of course is a deck that you co-created with, is it Ali Fell? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did.
For me, it's
we each
Gilded Tarot.
pull a card, and then we'll go around and kind of give our own interpretations of we think the meaning of that card is for us. Yeah. Are you game with that, Barbara?
I am.
Now, Barbara, okay. I have to tell you, because I'm using the Gilded Tarot, so that's yours and Cyril Marchetti's deck. I actually have two of them, because when I first bought it, I think it came out, might have been 2009, 2010, 2011. It's around that time frame. My wife's Australian, and then also works and travels for work. And I would leave cards, and I've talked about this in a previous podcast, I'd leave cards in her luggage as a reminder, sort of, so The Magician, which was the name of my website, or the Lover's card, or Strength, if I was trying to, say, look, you're going to do a keynote at a conference. And what ended up happening, though, is my original deck, which is here, only has about 62 cards in it. So I had to replace it with a deck and then, stop giving them away. So I actually have two, and I think it's out of print now, is it not? The Gilded Tarot itself?
The original Gilded, yeah. It's reissued with the Gilded Royale, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But this is the OG. This is the OG.
Mm-hmm. Okay, pull a card.
All right, do the same. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Barbara, do you want to go first, Barbara?
Yeah. Yes, because then maybe we can end on a higher note.
Okay. Well, I pulled a card then too. Maybe you should go last, because I don't think mine will be on a higher note either. So
mine's a good one. Well, not that there's good or bad, but we can end on mine if you want.
There you go.
I know, Bonnie, we can say that, but I mean, come on.
Totally.
Yeah, let's whatever. So I pulled the 5 of Pentacles from the Good Fortune Tarot.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is.
It is a nice enough image for what it is. It's two people in the snow. One is sitting down, and there are pentacles. Oh, if people are old enough to remember the Burma shave, billboards. It's a little bit like that. The pentacles pointing the way to go. So
Mhm.
yeah, Five of Pentacles. I mean, sure, we can talk about loss and um not having enough resources or being in need, and all
Mhm.
of those things feel like they're part of the card.
Yep.
Something that people talked about too with the card was well, in the traditional image, there's no door on the church, there's no way to get in. Therefore, people who are supposed to help aren't helping.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, that can be true, but also something I'm seeing in the world with less people being involved in organized religions, which were before the way communities came together, or maybe through the school. It was more neighborhood, at least
Mhm.
when I was growing up.
Mhm.
But now there are fewer people, and especially tarot people are really generally not into organized religion. So the thing is, with the Five of Pentacles, it's like you are in need, your community can help you. But if you're not part of a community, if it
Mhm.
works both ways, the community
Mhm.
isn't there if everyone doesn't work together to make it there, right? So you can't go anywhere for help if you haven't been part of something to make the help available. So that's just something I think of with the Five of Pentacles is,
Interesting.
just looking forward to maybe prevent the Pentacles from happening to you in the future. Form your network, form an organization, be part of something bigger than yourself, help people in need so when you need help, you can find it. Um,
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd never thought of it looking at it that way. So I really do appreciate that addition
you're welcome.
of help and community. That idea of is your community there. So Bonnie, you got anything to add with the Five of Pentacles or?
Yeah, I love that. And I think
Yeah.
that's why Peter and I love doing this podcast because we learn so much from each other and the people that we have on. So thank you for that perspective of the Five of Pentacles. I think of that card too as how I view lack in my own life and like what is it that I'm focused on? Am I focused on the lack? And that's why I'm feeling, the suffering, or can I sort of shift my mindset to be like, well, how can I be grateful for what I do have in this moment, as opposed to focusing on what I don't have? And then again, being able to reach out for help, knowing that it's okay to seek help. But I love what you're saying that, it is give and receive, right? And that'll continue on to the Six of Pentacles when we actually see that. Are we in the state of need or are we in the state that we're able to give? So that's a great perspective on that card. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. Yeah,
You're
and
welcome.
I love that you segued, because the only thing I'll add is you talk about the Six of Pentacles, and I always think, the Five of Pentacles from a numerological perspective is the middle of the journey. So, yep, is sitting in that energy. The Five of Pentacles is unpleasant. There's that sense of loss and lack. There's that deficit-based mindset. What I don't have as opposed to what I do have. But it is also a moment of this too shall pass, since the six, then the seven, then the eight, then the nine, and then the 10 all follow the five. So, it's sort of like sitting in that basin of I don't have, but knowing that really there is an opportunity to be able to move forward at some point. That life doesn't exist all the time, in that sensation. Sometimes it's help or us that need to move forward, but that rarely are we continuously sitting there. So,
Ah, that's an excellent reminder.
mm,
Yes.
all right.
Thank you.
So, Bonnie, I think we said we were going to finish with you, right? Because
Sure.
when Barbara said,
I'll put
"Ugh,
a
I want to
smile.
finish with
I'll
me,"
put a smile on our card.
my card, I drew the Nine of Swords.
Oh,
Right now, of course, I
Beautiful.
I I drew it from the Gilded Tarot. So for those of you who can see, for those of you who can't, I'll describe this card a little bit. So it's nine swords, but they're hovering. They actually seem to be crossing each other. They're kind of like intertwined. So I always think of those swords as thoughts, words, ideas, challenges, conflict, and there's a person sitting up in bed, which is something that we also see in the Rider-Waite-Smith. So these are those sword-like things that are keeping her up at night. I often, when I think of the swords, I think about the intangibility of these worries, that they sometimes seem real, But I always remind myself we're in the realm of swords, that these are sometimes things like mental constructs, their thoughts. It's a self narrative. Um, and then I'm looking at the differences. So the one thing that is present in this card that actually isn't in the Nine of Swords is, I'll say a window, which could be seen as a way out, which could be, seen as the idea of hope. There's a moon visible in that window. So, maybe what this is the importance of trusting intuition or embracing, our nighttime, like our shadow power, that, that idea of going deep, that the moon represents. And then the last one, because there's an owl in the window as well. So I'm thinking owl, symbol to represent wisdom. If we're already using that moon to be able to go deep, the owl might be there to remind us that maybe we need help. Maybe that owl is a representation of someone to support us in seeking our wisdom, or somebody providing us with some support to be able to shift that narrative, to recognize that these anxieties, these nightmares that are keeping us up at night, that changing that narrative is within our control. So that's, I don't know, that's kind of what I'm gathering from this Nine of Swords. Anyone, and open for, of course, other interpretations and other ideas around that card. And I do love that deck, I have to say. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add. You did a beautiful job, I think. One thing I will say is, even though it's a rough card, and I myself don't like having the Nine of Swords experience, but the card itself in every deck is almost always poignant and beautiful. Like, I'm always attracted to it, even though I don't want to have that experience.
Yeah,
The cards seem so beautiful that it touches something in me.
Yeah, that's even because you're right. Even somebody, I can't remember who the practitioner is, but they've actually created a quilt-based pattern on the Nine of Swords card that's in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and their name's going to escape me, but I think they offered for sale on their website, and I think, wow, what a great way to do exactly as you said, is to draw beauty from what essentially is one of the 5, black background cards in the Rider-Waite-Smith, right? It can be a pretty challenging card.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah,
Bonnie.
Yeah, whenever I get the Eight of Swords or the Nine of Swords, it always comes back as a reminder to me again. And it's kind of funny because you pulled the Five of Pentacles, and I think about mindset with that card, even though it's an earth card, but I think about the mindset of how we view lack. And then I think about the Nine of Swords is like, what is going through our mind, and what can we not escape from? Like those thoughts that just keep going and going. So again, it's a reminder for me to be like, where's my mindset right now? And I have the ability to change my thoughts, because what I'm probably worried about hasn't even happened. Like, I think what's happening in my head is way worse than what's actually going on. So those always, it's like my checkpoint of like, oh, okay. I'm going down that slope of like, I can't get out of this thought process.
I thought of something to add, just to, I don't know, entice you guys to invite me back someday. My friend
That's
and
an
I,
open invitation, just so you know.
right? But we did a little work with we called her the Queen of Air and Darkness, but it was the Queen of Swords.
Yeah.
And we were working on how we deal with things like you're talking about with the 8 and 9. And it was very helpful, and we can talk about that another time if you want.
Okay.
Yes. I would love that. Queen of Swords is very near and dear to my heart because I'm a Libra, so she's
she's your card.
She's my card. Yeah. Okay.
All right,
okay. So are we ready for mine?
Yep.
I know how we talked earlier about good and bad card, but this is one of my favorite cards in the deck. And I think, Peter, you like this one too. So this is the Six of Wands from the Steampunk Tarot. It's amazing. So for people who are listening, it has a gentleman on a gold horse, and he's got his the victory wreath, and he's sort of coming through a crowd of people, and they're looking him on. So what can I say? It's a Six of Wands. It's again, and the way I talk about cards is how I see them for myself, because I do think of the tarot as like this not improvement, but this discovery tool. So when I see the Six of Wands, I think about the work that I'm doing is going to be recognized and it's sort of needed. And it's going to benefit not just me, but other people. So it's having the courage to go out there and to pursue what it is that you want to do, getting recognition for that, and knowing that you'll be successful in that endeavor. And because it's the Suit of Wands, it's like that thing that you're really excited and passionate about, those things that really inspire you. And for me, that's tarot and meditation, but like doing this work. So it's always reminds me, like, Bonnie, keep doing what you're doing, because it not only is it helping you, but it's going to be helping other people. So I see that as a victory, not just for the self, but that everybody wins as a result of you going out and doing that thing that you want to do, and you'll be rewarded for that. Like success, not necessarily monetarily or whatever that means, but like it's a good thing to do that. So that's sort of my take on the Six of Wands. Anybody would like to add?
Barbara, go
You
ahead.
talked about my favorite part of it, which is the connection between the victor and their community.
Mhm.
It's symbiotic, and the benefits go both ways. And I do love that part of the card. So yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's a card that often reminds me as well that connection between community is that sometimes it's a reminder for us to take our bow, to recognize that, we have done something, that we're not at the end, because I always think from a numerological perspective, right? That 6 is not the end of a journey, but we've done something that warrants acknowledging our accomplishment. And I think sometimes that Six of Wands is an opportunity for us to just pause and be, this was worthy. This was a worthy task, or, there was mutual benefit between myself and my community. And I think that's, that card has value there as well. So yeah, it was a nice card to end on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
So Barbara, how
Yes.
can people find you? Do you have anything going on that you want to mention?
Oh, sure. I have a website, which is Barbara Moore Tarot or Tarot Shaman. Both will take you to the same place. So find me there, email me. I'm very accessible. Don't be afraid. Just contact me. So that, if you are going to be in the Minneapolis area, which is where I live, you can contact me directly, because I'm teaching at a public library, 2 different courses. So that will only be of interest to people who live locally, which I don't know how many there are, but contact me. I'll tell you about that. January, February. Bigger events that other people can go to. May 30th through June 1st. The Great Lake Area Diviners Experience, Glade, Glade, put on by Heatherly Navarre in the Boston Tea Room. It's a 3-day conference, and I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers there.
Excellent.
Amityville Apothecary in Amityville, New York, on June 21st, the summer solstice. They're having a 1-day extravaganza, and I'm one of the speakers, so that you can go to. And then now this one I'm not teaching at, I'm just attending. It's my hometown conference. It was the North Star Tarot Conference, but now it's switching to a retreat. So it's North Star Retreat, and it's May 17th through the 19th. It's limited to 22 people. I know there are still a few spaces open, and that's going to be wonderful. I love a retreat. I love going somewhere and just staying and settling in and having 3 days to let spirit work on me.
Well,
I agree with you. That is, if somebody asked me what my dream vacation is, it would be that.
there you go. Well,
Yeah,
you're going to
so
have to
that-
attend. Yeah.
Hmm?
I was going to say, Bonnie, you're going to have to attend. It sounds like,
I know, I would love to. That's so my eldest daughter, Samantha, she does competitive dance, and in the spring, like from the end of March until the beginning of June, we're all dance competitions.
Oh,
That's one of the weekends where we're away, but I would love to come to that. So hopefully you'll do something like that again in the future.
yeah.
yeah. Well, I did run a retreat once, and it was wonderful. It was a lot of work, was really
Mm.
good. And I'm feeling like I might want to be doing another one again someday. So keep your eyes open,
Oh,
your ears peeled.
we will absolutely. And I loved hearing, well, a couple of things. You talked about the idea of library, and I'm heavily involved in our local library here. I loved hearing you talk about like somebody with your experience to say, I just love attending, because that concept of, you got 30 plus years in tarot, but always still something to learn. So again, on behalf of Bonnie and I want to thank you for coming to share your learning with us. On behalf of the people who are going to be watching and listening, a huge thank you for them as well, for coming to join us on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. And on that note, we will say thank you to everyone for taking the time to listen. Barbara, you have an open invitation to come and join us at any time that you like. And on that note, we will say so long.
Yes, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you, Barbara.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Until we meet again. Bye.